Hi, everybody. Paul and Matt here from Fiduciary Wealth with another webinar for you. Today, we're going to be talking about property in Spain. Bit of a topical one because there's been a recent announcement that I think a lot of you might have seen in the UK press about taxes when purchasing property in Spain, which has maybe spooked a few people. Um, so we talk generally about property in Spain, but that's a hot topic on property in Spain at the moment, Paul. So what's going on with that?
Well, it's very confusing um, because the headlines talk about 100% tax on the value of the property, and we still need to get some steer and some guidance from the Spanish government in terms of what it actually means. I doubt it very much. A property 500,000, you're going to pay another 500,000 in tax, right?
Yeah.
It's a discriminatory tax because it impacts um, non-Europeans that affects not exclusively, but mainly Brits moving to Spain. Um, and yeah, my interpretation is that they're probably increasing the tax, doubling the current tax on property. So whatever it is, I don't know if it's 7 or it's 10 or 6 now, but whatever it is, it's a doubling of the tax. But who knows until we get some guidance and instructions and clarity on the issue, it's still up in the air. But the one thing we need to bear in mind is that Spain does some strange things which make no sense, but they still um, pass it into law. I mean, in 2021, 22, they said that UK pension or non-EU pension transfers to Spain would be taxed on the full amount of the pension transfer at the point of transfer. So someone's sending across a UK pension into a Europe's of £1 million would be taxed on the full amount as if it was income being drawn. And then on the residual value, they would still pay tax on pension income. So they've done that. They allowed the autonomous regions to apply their own wealth tax. Andalusia, I think it was in September 2022, decided to scrap the Spanish wealth tax. And 2 weeks later, at the government, at the national level, they decided to impose a countrywide wealth tax, which they promised to be temporary, but now has become a permanent feature. So Spain does some weird things that are unexplainable.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think the key takeaway from that is that the taxes is not only when people think about different taxes between, say, the UK and Spain, some people think, oh, I need to know what the tax rate is in that country compared. It's not, if only if it was as simple as that. The way different countries, especially Spain, like you say, taxes certain things is vastly different to what we do in the UK.
completely. I mean, the other thing that strikes me as, you know, odd. I mean, clearly it's politically motivated when Pedro Sanchez says we need to increase taxes to dissuade foreign investors for buying property in Spain because it's pushing the price higher. This is the same rhetoric and the same language that the Portuguese Prime Minister used 2 years earlier, blaming expatriates for the surge in the price of property. No, I'm really sorry. Only if you look at property purchases in 2024, only 5% of property purchases came from non-Europeans. That has a negligible effect on the price of property in the big scheme of things. That's one. So, I mean, applying an increase in taxation doesn't really deal with the issue of surging house prices. And secondly, Matt, and I'll say the same thing which applied to Portugal in 2022. The problem is not expatriates buying property. The problem is that the Spanish government is failing. There's clearly a supply demand imbalance. They're not building enough rental property. Spanish government is not building enough property to meet up with demand, and that is also contributing to the surge in prices. If the Spanish government were to build property for rental, then it would start addressing the issue. So, yeah, the typical language you expect to hear from politicians across the globe when they want to try to um, deflect attention from their own shortcomings and the inability to address an underlying issue. So it
Yeah.
does really bring a smile to my face to hear them, you know, create a lot of noise and to try and purport to be on the side of, you know, Spanish nationals who are struggling to get into the property ladder. I mean,
Yeah.
they should take full responsibility, take extreme ownership for their lack of action, which has led us to where we are, rather than try and tax non-Europeans. I mean, any country relies on foreign direct investment. And, Spain being a very attractive destination for retirees, shouldn't you try and encourage them to come to Spain? So they talk about wanting to bring in foreign direct investment and more people into Spain. They start applying a wealth tax, which dissuades high net worth individuals from moving to Spain that rather go to Portugal. Then, after they've done the wealth tax, they apply a tax on the totality of UK pension transfers to Spain, which dissuades people from transferring their UK pensions. And now they're going to increase the tax for non-Europeans, British nationals. Let's call it
But
that.
bear in
It's
mind with the latter, Paul, this is for people who don't aren't residents in Spain. So if and hopefully most people watching this webinar, we deal with people moving to Spain, so they should be okay. It's
but
those
is it that clear that it's for
that
non
one is 100% clear. Yeah, it's
for
only
second
so what
homes?
yeah, what they're trying to because we've seen and I'm sure people watching have seen, in places like Malaga, I think Barcelona as well, the locals who've gone out and they focused on the holiday makers actually, and I think their issue is that. So if you're moving to Spain, which hopefully the people watching this, that one should be okay. I mean, we need to talk in a minute about taxes when buying property in Spain because it's very different to what we encounter in the UK as well. But I think with this one, it's less of a concern. The other taxes, absolutely, people need to be aware and plan against these.
We'll wait and see. I mean, it's like Rachel Reeves with the UK autumn budget.
Yeah.
They apply some measures and then they enter consultation period and they realize that they haven't given it full consideration. Matt, I don't know where the land lies with the property tax. I really don't, because Spain does some strange things. So when they provide that guidance and that clarity, then we should maybe reconvene and have another chat and see what it is. Maybe it's a lot to do about nothing, but I wouldn't put it past Spain from many, many years of advising British nationals moving to Spain that they do something which is strange and inexplicable to normal human beings. But who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and so for those people who are buying property on the rules that we know at the moment, always subject to change, which I guess we should have this caveat in every video. But when you are buying property in Spain, you need to have that additional money that maybe not as much as is required in the UK. I think people estimate maybe around another 12%, 10 to 12% on top of the purchase price covers what we were talking about. Transfer tax here, I think is around 7% in Andalusia, higher in other regions. And this is something we'll talk about in other videos when we talk about taxes. Another thing you need to be aware of in Spain is the taxes do vary depending on the region you live in. Um, you've obviously got your, solicitors' bills, everything that comes with it. So and what I find for me strange as somebody who's bought in Spain as well is estate agents. They charge an absolute fortune in Spain, don't they? 5% I think is normal.
5% is a standard,
Yeah.
but it's not unusual to find that they charge more than five.
Yep.
And very often they apply the 5% to the buyer and then the seller separately
They try to go on both sides. I've seen
on
that.
both
Yeah.
sides.
Yeah.
It's just insane. And then
Yeah.
you look at the Gibraltar and the UK and they charge 2%. It's very clear. I think it's almost enshrined in law. This is what we do. And there's no, funny games, behind the scenes trying to extract as much as they can. But it does make it, I mean, Spain is such a beautiful country. It still attracts expatriates, retirees, and entrepreneurs and digital nomad visa remote workers because of its beauty and lifestyle. But it's insane what they charge, as you say, 10 to 12% on a purchase, and then on the exit they yeah, they take a big chunk as well.
Yeah.
So it's not for the faint-hearted buying in Spain.
No, no, and I think a lot of people we come across and they've made money in the UK, via their property. They bought their property maybe in the 80s, there was a boom. And property prices in the UK, as it does in Gibraltar, tend to, be quite good value. But for Spain, you buy in Spain and you're already 15% down before you can reach breaking point.
But Matt, again, this is what makes me laugh. If Pedro Sanchez says that the surging property prices. Property prices are flat. I bought my property off plan in 2002. I got the keys in 2004. Off plan normally gives you a head start and an advantage. And from 2002 to 2007, 2008, prices went through the roof, right? 23 years on, and the property I acquired is roughly the same as it was when I bought it. So, when they talk about those surging prices, what Pedro Sanchez doesn't say is that following the global financial crisis, prices crashed in Spain and there was already a bubble in Spain. It was the
Yeah.
US and then Spain was one of the markets that suffered the most. So, what property price surging? There's been prices starting to recover, having plummeted 15
Yeah.
years ago. It's not as if prices are 300% up in the last 5 years, right? Far
Yeah,
from it.
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, it's quite manageable. It's normal for property to go up in price, but hey, politics is politics, and sometimes for domestic consumption, they will try and do whatever they can. But that's
No, no, of
that.
course. Yeah. I mean, we had the conversation earlier and it's politicians throughout the world, and this is not based on a particular country or if it's left and right or whatever parties, they have this short-term approach and often they want to deflect away from what they aren't doing. And a very regularly used tool is say, okay, the foreigners, let's blame them. Let's put a tax on them that will make zero difference, but it looks like we're doing something so people can, get off their backs and rather than saying, we need to take action now. Let's invest for the long term when they've got this short time spirit. But no, maybe we shouldn't do a webinar just focused on our opinion on politicians, Paul. That could be a lengthy one.
No, that can be a lengthy one. But look, Matt, I'll say what I said when Portugal came up with this. They banned the golden visa and the property prices, and I'll say it again because it's my honest opinion. All they should do is, they should have kept the golden visa in and the non-habitual residency and all that, because they blame the non-habitual residency too, and they should just create a real estate fund and say, look, we create a real estate fund. You have to contribute towards that sinking fund, and then the money from that fund goes into social housing, and they will create properties in for the rental market. There's 100 ways of skinning a cat, intelligent ways of addressing the issue without having to kill the golden goose. But they don't think outside the box. They just think, okay, what's the easiest thing? Unfortunately, whether we like it or not, but that's the mentality in Southern Europe. How can I do it quickly without having to put in a lot of effort and, okay, blame the foreigners and just stop the scheme, right? It's
Yeah,
just madness.
yeah,
It only happens in unfortunately in South European countries. It's the same. The global financial crisis comes, you know, the tourism market collapses, and you go to an hotel in Spain or Portugal, and what have they done? They doubled the price because they've had a drop in revenue, and the only way of bringing their revenues up is by doubling the price. So guess what happens? No one comes, and then suddenly they have no revenue, and hotels have to close rather than like they would do in the UK. Let's cut the price of a room because there's no demand, right? We'll
yeah,
make it cheap and more people will come, and then at least it covers our overheads. But no, in countries like Spain and Portugal, their response to economic crisis yeah, is strange from an economic perspective. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. The other thing that just came to mind about property, so we're talking about property in Spain, but of course, if somebody is moving from the UK, they're moving to Spain, and they may have their main resident in the UK. And I think one maybe tip we can give today is you need to be mindful of when you're selling your UK property as well, because if you sell that when you become a Spanish tax resident, they will want a piece of that pie as well, won't they, as well? So that's something
absolutely.
to be very mindful of. Um, I think there's a lot of taxes for people to be mindful, and we try to cover as much as possible in these webinars, Paul. But I think we always advise people you need to plan properly, and you definitely need to plan well in advance to make sure everything is in order and give you plenty of time. I think that's fair to say.
Completely.
Good. Wonderful. Well, I think that's the end of this webinar. I think we will probably be back at some point with more news and update as and when they release details on this new property tax. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the webinar. We are producing a lot more webinars, more to come, free to watch and listen on our YouTube. So please subscribe, like, share. If you've got any questions or ideas for future webinars, leave us a comment as well, and we will return with more content. But for now, thank you and goodbye.